Going to show you how to program a quiz that I would use for a listening activity where you want students to complete information in a table. Now to do this, this would be along the harder sides of Educanda's programming, but I'm sure everybody is able to do this. We just need to take it step by step. For this activity, you will need, of course, access to your Educanda's page, and also it's a very good idea to have your activity ready in a Word document so that all you have to do is copy paste your activity in. You don't have to think as you're going through Educanda's. So as I said, I'm going to use this for A1, but you could program this type of activity for any level. And the outcome that I am going for today is I can listen and understand the main points of someone telling about myself. And just like Blue Peter, I'm going to show you first. Here's one I programmed earlier, so you can see what the final product looks like before actually going through the motions. So here we can see the students have the instructions that they're going to listen to Thomas introducing himself. Here I have the audio
do you
file.
mind answering some questions about your likes and dislikes?
Sure, no problem.
First of all, what?
And here they have the options to drag and drop into the correct space in the table. And I've repeated this 3 times, each time with a different person and a different audio. So that's what the activity looks like in the finished version. Now let's see how to program it. Okay, so I'm going to program this as obligatory activity 2. You decide whichever one you want. So back to my Word document. This was my original activity that I would have done if we were in the classroom. Just one table, and students listen to all 3 people, one after the other, and they complete with pencil and paper the spaces with the information. And then I also had the table with the answers. However, to virtualize this, I think it is much easier, much user-friendly on Educanda's to separate out your three columns into 3 separate tables. So you can see I took person 1 and I made person 1 into its own table. Same with person 2 is in its own table, and same as person 3. This just makes it a lot more friendly to use for the students in Educanda's. Then the next thing you can see that I've done is, of course, I have the correct answers, the original correct answers here, but I've just copied and pasted them below. So I have the correct answer, and I also have some distractors here, which I'll also copy and paste into Educanda's. So before you begin programming, I suggest you have the correct answer and then 1 or 2 distractors for each option. And I've done that for every option here. Okay, once you have that, there's only 2 more steps to go before we program. The first one is you want to take a screenshot of your table. Now on the Mac, I can just literally take the screenshot of the part of the screen that I want. If you are using a Word in a PC, you'll have to take a screenshot of the whole screen and then perhaps do some editing in Paint to edit it down to just the table. So you want to make sure you do that for all 3 tables. And save them somewhere that's easy to find. You can see mine are on my desktop here, so they're easy for me to find. And then the final step is you want to make sure that you have the audio tracks. So again, make sure they're in a place that's easy to get to and easily labeled so you know that you're uploading the correct audio tracks. And here you can see I have one track for each table. Okay, now we're ready to begin programming. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click to open the obligatory activity, and I'm going to click Edit Quiz. We're going to add a new question, and we want to click the option Drag and Drop onto Image. So I add that. Next, this doesn't really matter. This also doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do, this is question 1. And here we have the question text. So what I want to paste here are my instructions. Okay, so here I have my instructions. I could write just so it's super clear. Instructions. And I can reformat it any way that I wish. Put it in red. Okay, we have our instructions, and we also need to upload our audio track here. So we do this by clicking on this little camera icon here. Choose audio. We want to browse my computer. We want to choose the file. Okay, and here you have the audio. We're doing question 1, so I'm going to choose audio 1. I'm also going to name this so that it's saved on the server. I'm going to upload the file and insert media, and it should appear here, and you can always double check to make sure it's the correct one by hitting
do you
play.
mind answering some questions about your likes and dislikes?
Sure, no problem.
Yeah, I can hear Rod, so I know he is Thomas. Okay, now as we can see from the table, this table has 3 empty spaces. So I'm going to change this default mark from 1 to 3 so they get 1 correct point for each answer. Okay, now we are going to drag and drop or upload the screenshot of the table that we saved. So I do this by clicking Choose File, going back to my desktop and choosing Table 1. Again, I can save this to my server as Table 1, and it should appear here. Then we have the draggable items. So it gives you an image. We could either drag an image into the table or text. And for this activity, I would like text. So what I'm going to do is my pre-prepared answers. I'm going to take each one by one and paste it in here along with all of my distractors. Each time I want to make sure I'm changing this to draggable text. Now you might run out of spaces, but you can always click 3 more draggable items to add, and it should add them automatically. We just need to scroll down, and there we can see we can continue adding. Okay, now we're going to go into the drop zones. This is where we want to identify the correct answers. So in this in this menu here, we want to only select what are our correct answers. So I can see for number 1, this is the correct spelling. Number 2, this is the correct phone number. And number 3, this is the correct food. Okay? Now comes the really cool part. If we scroll up to the image, we can see that our options here have been added below. So I can now add, for example, pasta is a favorite food. This is a phone number. And Leicester is the correct spelling. And if I click refresh preview, this is a very important step not to miss. With refresh preview, and I go all the way back down to drop zones, I can see that Educandis has saved the position of these options. So now, when students drag and drop, Educandis will be able to determine whether the option is correct or incorrect, if it's the correct option and if it's in the correct space in the table. And that's pretty cool. Okay, almost done. In the combined feedback, we can change this to whatever we want, but I would suggest making it bigger so that students can see it better. And also, because we have 3 questions on one, I'm going to change it to your answers are correct with a little exclamation. And for partially correct, maybe I'll add your answers are almost correct. And then for incorrect, you may want to just add your answers are incorrect and maybe change that to a full stop. Okay, so let's review everything that we did here. First of all, we gave the question a name. We pasted in the instructions and we uploaded the audio file. Because this question has 3 items, we put the default mark as 3. We uploaded the image of the first table. We entered all of the answers, including our distractors. In the drop zones, we identified which ones are the correct answers, and then, the most important part, we clicked Refresh Preview to save these options onto the table. Now Educandis knows if these options are correct or incorrect. And then finally, we just edited the format and the wording of the combined feedback. So definitely save changes and continue editing. And Educandis gives you the option at the bottom to preview. So you can see this is how it will look for the students. They have all of the answers. They can listen.
Hi, do you mind answering some questions about your dislike?
And then they can upload. And I'm going to get one wrong. I'm going to say this one is pizza. They click check. And they can see my answers are almost correct. Now, if we wanted, we could give students a second option to do this. That means they can go through it again and try to correct their incorrect options. Unfortunately, with the drag and drop into the image, it won't tell them which one is incorrect, which is a bit of a shame. But again, if we're thinking about programming this as a quiz, maybe we only want to give them one attempt to do this, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, so for the display options down here, you might have to change some things. So you definitely want to make them see whether it's correct, shown, marks, show mark, and the max. And then everything here, the specific feedback is shown, the general feedback, the right answer, and the response history. That's all of this information in the table so that they can see more information about their options. And once you've done that, you can click Save here, and you can close your preview. Then finally, right at the bottom, you save changes. So that's you added one question. I'm going to repeat exactly the same in order to add my second table and my third table. Okay, so here I can see all 3 of my questions have been added. Now the only thing that's left for me to do is make sure that students will be able to see that they have everything correct or almost correct or nothing correct here. And for this, we actually have to go back into the settings of the quiz. So instead of clicking here, we want to click Edit and Edit Settings. And for this, we want to come down into Review Options, okay? And we want to make sure that all of these are checked, okay? The default setting might be that none of these are checked, but maybe this one and this one and this one are checked. But what we want to make sure is that all of these are checked so that immediately after students have finished, they can see whether their answers were correct, what their marks were, if we gave them any specific or general feedback, the right answers, and the overall feedback. So that's super important that we go back in and make sure that this is all checked. And then if we wanted, while the quiz is still open, so we're still within that week limit of each obligatory activity, you can decide whether they see all of the options, but I would just limit it to the attempt, just so that it's not so easy for them to take screenshots of their answers and share them out between each other. Then the only thing that's left for me to do here is the timing. Of course, for you, these will already be enabled. I had to disable them so that I can preview it now. But you might want to think about putting a time limit for the activity. So for example, I would say if this was in a class, maybe this would take us 20 minutes. So that means that students, as soon as they enter the quiz, they will only have 20 minutes to complete it. And after the 20 minutes is up, they will not be allowed to resubmit during the week. And finally, save and return to course. Now, if we want to look at all the activities all together, here I can see attempt quiz now, and it reminds me that there's a time limit on here, so I'm going to start my attempt. And this is what it looks like. Question 1, question 2, and question 3, each time with the options and their distractors. And with the audio tracks here, I can drag and drop. Okay. Here I didn't add all of the distractors as this is just an example. Eesh. And I get some wrong to show you what it looks like. I'm playing football. Okay, I'm done. Up here, students will be able to see how much time they have left. And they can click Finish Attempt. In order to see which ones they got right, they must submit all and finish. And then they can see, woohoo, my answers are correct. Oh no, my answers are incorrect. If it just says that, it means all of the answers are incorrect. And then here we can see my answers are almost correct. And depending on whether you set it to 1 attempt or 2 attempts, they would be able to go back in and check their and redo their answers. Maybe you consider this for a classroom activity, but maybe not for the obligatory activity. Okay, so happy programming. Let me know if you have any questions or doubts.